1. Hook, opening strike. Imagine the fastest object ever created by man flying through the void. There is nothing around it, no stars nearby, no planets, only cold and silence. But even at that speed, it took 9 years to reach Pluto. 9 years, and not a single opportunity to turn around, not a single chance for repairs. If something breaks, the mission is over. This is the story of how humanity sent a tiny device to the edge of the solar system, to a place where no one had ever been before. There's about 9 years of waiting, a malfunction 10 days before reaching the destination, and a photograph that changed everything we knew about the final frontier. 2. Background, the calm before the storm. On February 18th, 1930, 24-year-old Clyde Tombaugh sat in a dark room at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona. In front of him was a blink comparator, a device that allowed him to quickly switch between 2 photographic plates of the same section of the sky, taken a few days apart. Tombaugh was not a professional astronomer. He was a farmer from Kansas who built his own telescope and sent his sketches of Jupiter to the observatory, simply to get the expert's opinion. He was hired as a junior assistant. The work was monotonous, comparing thousands of stars on plates, looking for the one point that had shifted. And he found her. A tiny speck, barely visible, moved between frames. It was not a star. It was a new world, beyond Neptune's orbit, at the very edge of the known solar system. The planet was named Pluto, after the Roman god of the underworld. The name was suggested by an 11-year-old schoolgirl from Oxford. The dark world got a dark name, but what Pluto really was, no one knew. For the next 75 years, it remained a mystery, a point of light in telescopes, an abstraction at the edge of the map. Even Hubble, humanity's most powerful space telescope, saw Pluto as a blurry spot, a few pixels. Scientists compared it to trying to see a picture on a football from a distance of 65 kilometers. You can tell that the ball exists. You might even notice that there is something on it. But what exactly? Impossible to tell. Light and dark areas were visible, some kind of spots that changed as it rotated. But no mountains, no valleys, no craters. Pluto remained a faceless world, and to see the face, you had to come closer. In 1989, a young planetary scientist named Alan Stern first proposed to NASA that it send a mission to Pluto. He was 32 years old. He had just completed his doctoral dissertation and was obsessed with the idea of exploring the last unexplored world in the classical solar system. NASA declined. Stern did not give up. He proposed again and again. Projects were cancelled, budgets were cut, priorities changed. Pluto Kuiper Express was shut down. Pluto Fast Flyby was cancelled. Each time there was a new reason, a new disappointment. Years passed. The 90s ended. A new century dawned. Stern continued to fight. In 2001, NASA finally announced a competition for a mission to Pluto as part of its New Frontiers program. Stern assembled a team from the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory and the Southwest Research Institute. They named their project New Horizons. In 2003, after 14 years of struggle, the project was approved, but there was almost no time left. Pluto was moving away from the Sun along its elongated orbit. Its thin nitrogen atmosphere, heated by its relative proximity to the Sun, was beginning to freeze and settle on the surface. If the spacecraft was not launched in January 2006, it would be necessary to wait another 12 years to use Jupiter's gravity for acceleration. By that time, Pluto's atmosphere could have disappeared. The team had less than 3 years to design, build and test a spacecraft for the most distant mission in history. They made it. On the 19th of January 2006 at 1900 hours, Greenwich Mean Time, an Atlas V rocket lifted off from Cape Canaveral. At its apex, beneath the fairing, was a device the size of a grand piano and weighing 478 kilograms. And inside this device, in a small aluminium capsule, lay some of the ashes of Clyde Tombaugh, the man who discovered Pluto 76 years ago and died in 1997 without ever seeing his planet up close. Now he was flying towards her. New Horizons left Earth's vicinity at a speed of 16.26 kilometers per second, 58,000 kilometers per hour. It was the fastest launch in the history of space exploration. the spacecraft crossed the Moon's orbit in 9 hours. The Apollo missions took 3 days to do this, but ahead lay 5 billion kilometers of emptiness, and even at that speed, it meant 9 years of travel. 3. Anomaly analysis / technical feat escalation. The New Horizons was not just fast, it was small, light, and incredibly economical. Engineers understood that solar panels would be useless at such a distance from the Sun. The light that provides 1,000 watts per square meter in Earth's orbit weakens almost 1,000 times at Pluto. The spacecraft needed its own energy source, one that did not depend on the stars. The solution was RITEG, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. Its nuclear core operated on the decay of plutonium-238. 11 kilograms of radioactive fuel, sealed in a titanium capsule, slowly decayed, releasing heat. Thermocouples converted this heat into electricity. At launch, RITEG produced 245 watts, less than 2 ordinary light bulbs. By the time it flew past Pluto, its power had dropped to 200 watts. This was barely enough to power 7 scientific instruments, the onboard computer and the transmitter. But that was enough. The instruments were selected with surgical precision. Every gram counted. The total weight of the scientific equipment was 30 kilograms. Ralph is a camera and spectrometer for imaging in the visible and infrared ranges. Alice is an ultraviolet spectrometer for studying the atmosphere. Laurie is a narrow field telescope for detailed images from a great distance. Rex is a radio experiment for measuring temperature and pressure, plus solar wind detectors, a cosmic dust counter, and a charged particle analyzer. All of this is the size of a grand piano. It weighs as much as 3 grown men. The spacecraft did not fly in a straight line. In February 2007, 13 months after launch, New Horizons approached Jupiter. It wasn't a deviation from the course, it was a calculation. On February 28th, the spacecraft passed within 2.3 million kilometers of the largest planet in the solar system. The gas giant's gravity captured it, accelerated it, and hurled it further away like a stone from a slingshot. The speed increased by 14,000 kilometers per hour. The journey to Pluto was reduced by 3 years, but Jupiter did not just provide acceleration, it provided a rehearsal. For 4 months, New Horizons filmed Jupiter's system: clouds, storms, rings, satellites. The cameras captured the eruption of the Volcanio star on Io, a column of hot matter ejected to a height of 330 kilometers above the surface. Infrared sensors counted 36 active volcanoes. Scientists saw 3 eruptions for the first time. It was a stress test, a check of all systems under combat conditions, 8 years before the main objective. The device coped, and then there was silence. New Horizons spent most of its journey in hibernation. Its systems were shut down, its computer was asleep. Only once every few months did the spacecraft wake up, send a "I'm alive" signal to Earth, and then fall asleep again. This is not the romance of distant travels. It is an engineering necessity. The less the electronics work, the less they wear out. The fewer commands from Earth, the less chance of error. Years passed. 2008, 2010. The device had travelled halfway. 2012, 2014. The team on Earth grew older along with the mission. Alan Stern, who began fighting for the flight to Pluto in 1989, had now been waiting for the result of his dream for 26 years. In December 2014, New Horizons woke up for the last time. Ahead lay 6 months of active work: rendezvous, flyby, historic photographs. Everything was going according to plan, and then came the 4th of July 2015. US Independence Day, holiday, fireworks. At 13:54 Eastern Time, the control center at the Applied Physics Laboratory lost contact with the spacecraft. New Horizons fell silent, 10 days before reaching its destination. The control room was silent. Then came controlled panic. People who had been waiting for this moment for almost 10 years stared at blank screens. The device was 4/10 of a billion kilometers away from Earth. The signal traveled at the speed of light for 4.5 hours in one direction. Any command would take 9 hours to receive a response. If something broke, there was no one to fix it. An hour has passed. 1 hour and 21 minutes. At 15 past 15, the signal returned. The autopilot kicked in. the onboard computer detected an overload. It was trying to compress scientific data and download a new command sequence for the flight at the same time. The processor couldn't cope. The system did what it was programmed to do. It switched to the backup computer and sent out a distress signal. The team spent the next 3 days repairing the equipment. 3 days without sleep, with a 9-hour delay for each team. They made it. On July 7th, New Horizons returned to normal operations. Less than 1% of planned observations were lost. No critical measurements were affected. Alan Stern told reporters, "In terms of science, this does not affect our assessment." But inside, he knew how close they had come to disaster. 4. Reconstruction of the event/climax, the heart of the story. 14th of July 2015. At 11:49 GMT, New Horizons crossed the point of closest approach to Pluto, 12,500 kilometers above the surface, speed 50,000 kilometers per hour relative to the dwarf planet. At that speed, the spacecraft had only a few hours to collect data, a few hours after 9 years of travel. The cameras operated continuously. Laurie took detailed photographs. Ralph scanned the surface in different spectra. Alice studied the atmosphere illuminated by the sun from behind. But on Earth, this was not seen. It could not be seen. At the moment of closest approach, the spacecraft was not transmitting data. It was too busy taking pictures, making measurements, and recording everything on its onboard storage devices. The antenna was pointed at Pluto, not Earth. Only 13 hours after the flyby did New Horizons turn around and send its first signal. A 15-minute sequence of data confirming that the flyby had been successful. This signal reached Earth at 0 hours, 52 minutes on the 15th of July, Greenwich Mean Time. In the control center, there is applause, hugs, tears. People who have been working on the mission for decades finally know it worked. And then the photographs arrived, and Pluto turned out to be not what they expected. Scientists were prepared to see a dead world, an ancient surface covered with craters, like the Moon or Mercury, a frozen sphere at the edge of the solar system, unchanged for billions of years. Instead, they saw a living planet. The first thing that caught the eye was a giant bright area in the shape of a heart, almost 1,600 kilometers across. It was immediately named the Tombaugh region, after the man whose ashes were on board the spacecraft. But that was only the beginning. The left side of the heart, Sputnik Plain, turned out to be a giant glacier of frozen nitrogen. 1,000 kilometers of pure, smooth ice, and there was not a single crater on this ice. Not a single one. A surface that is 4.5 billion years old should have craters. Space throws rocks at everything it encounters. If there are no craters, it means that something is erasing them. This means that the surface is young. This means that the planet is geologically active. The age of the satellite plane has been estimated at less than 10 million years. By geological standards, that is yesterday. The nitrogen ice on this plane does not simply lie there. It moves. Slow convection mixes it, like water in a boiling kettle, only thousands of times slower. Warm ice rises from the depths, cold ice sinks. This creates strange polygonal cells on the surface, each tens of kilometers across. Pluto is breathing. Slowly, barely perceptibly, but breathing nonetheless. Next to the glacier are mountains, not hills, not elevations. Real mountains up to 3.5 kilometers high. They were named the Norgay Mountains and the Hillary Mountains, in honor of the first conquerors of Everest. But these mountains could not have been made of the same nitrogen ice as the plains. Nitrogen ice is too soft. It would have melted under its own weight. Pluto's mountains are made of water ice. At a temperature of -230 degrees Celsius, water ice is as hard as granite, and above it all, the atmosphere. A thin haze stretching hundreds of kilometers upwards, about 20 layers, clearly visible in the photographs in backlight. Blue haze. Pluto has a blue sky, just like Earth. The particles in this haze are tholins. These are organic molecules formed when the sun's ultraviolet rays break down methane and nitrogen in the atmosphere. They settle on the surface, giving Pluto its characteristic reddish-brown hue. Organics, at the edge of the solar system, on a world that was thought to be dead. But the main mystery lay deeper. Data analysis has shown that there is likely an ocean hidden beneath Pluto's icy crust. Liquid water, possibly mixed with ammonia, which prevents it from freezing. The orientation of the satellite planes, the nature of the tectonic faults on the surface, and the very mechanics of the planet's rotation all pointed to a massive reservoir of liquid beneath the ground. An ocean on Pluto. This idea seemed crazy even the day before the flyby. Now it has become a working hypothesis. 5. Consequences, scars and discoveries. Pluto was only part of the story. The dwarf planet has 5 moons, each of which is strange in its own way. Charon is the largest of them. Its diameter is 1,212 kilometers, more than half the size of Pluto itself. These two bodies do not revolve around each other in the usual sense. They revolve around a common center of mass located in the void between them. Pluto and Charon are a double planet, forever bound together by a gravitational dance. In the photographs, Charon looked completely different from its parent planet. Grey, harsh, scarred by canyons. But one detail caught the eye. The moon's north pole was red, a dark red spot, unofficially named Mordor, after the gloomy country from Tolkien's books. Where did this colour come from? The answer turned out to be related to Pluto. Methane escaping from the dwarf planet's atmosphere is partially captured by Charon. At the satellite's poles, which are immersed in a century-long winter, this methane freezes. Then, when the pole turns back towards the sun, ultraviolet light converts the methane into heavy organic compounds, the very tholins that give Pluto its colour. Charon's red cap is a gift from a neighbour, a chemical kiss across the abyss of space. A giant canyon has been discovered on Charon, a system of faults stretching for 1,800 kilometres. It is 4 times longer than the Grand Canyon and twice as deep. Scientists have suggested that Charon once had a liquid ocean inside it. Then it froze. Water expands when it turns to ice. The moon's crust could not withstand the pressure from within and cracked. Charon was literally torn apart from within. His own ocean became his executioner. The 4 small satellites, Styx, Nix, Kerberos and Hydra, turned out to be even stranger. Tiny, irregularly shaped, resembling potatoes, but their surface reflected light with unexpected brightness. They were covered with pure water ice, and they were spinning incorrectly. Ordinary satellites are synchronized with their planets. One side always faces its host. This is how our moon behaves. This is how the large satellites of Jupiter and Saturn behave. Pluto's small moons do not. They tumble. They spin chaotically, like spinning tops launched by an unskilled hand. Hydra makes 89 revolutions around its axis for every 1 revolution around Pluto. Nix rotates backwards and sideways at the same time. The gravitational influence of Pluto and Charon dancing around each other turns orbital mechanics into chaos. These small worlds have never known peace. The flight took hours. Data transfer took 15 months. Due to the enormous distance, the connection speed was 1 to 2 kilobits per second, roughly equivalent to a modem from the 90s. 6.5 gigabytes of scientific data flowed through the abyss, bit by bit, drop by drop. On the 25th of October 2016, the last bit of information reached Earth. Only then did scientists receive the complete mission archive, but New Horizons did not stop there. On January 1st, 2019, 3.5 years after Pluto, the spacecraft passed its next target, a Kuiper Belt object temporarily named 2014 MU-69. It was later named Arakoth, a word from the Pukeham language meaning sky. Arakoth was 6.5 billion kilometers from the Sun. It is the most distant object ever visited by a spacecraft, and he turned out to be like a snowman. More precisely, 2 pancakes that have stuck together. A contact double system, 2 objects that once flew side by side slowly drew closer and gently joined together. They did not collide. They joined together, almost without impact. This is important. It changes theories. It was previously believed that planets and their building blocks were formed through violent collisions, chaos, impacts, destruction, and remelting. Arakoth proved otherwise. At the dawn of the solar system, matter could stick together smoothly, almost gently, like snowflakes forming a snowdrift. Arakoth is a time capsule. It has remained virtually unchanged for 4.5 billion years, a relic of an era when the solar system was just coming into being. 6. Epilogue, philosophical catharsis. New Horizons is now more than 60 astronomical units from the Sun. 1 astronomical unit is the distance from Earth to the Sun. 60 is twice as far as Pluto was at the time of flyby. The spacecraft is travelling at a speed of approximately 500 million kilometres per year. At this speed, it would cover the distance from Earth to the Sun in about 4 months. But all around is only emptiness. Right Egg continues to operate. Its power decreases with each passing year. Plutonium-238 decays, generating less heat. But there is still enough energy, the instruments are functioning, the transmitter is sending data. In the year 2024, the dust counter aboard New Horizons recorded something unexpected. The level of dust particles at the edge of the Kuiper belt was higher than models had predicted. Much higher. This could mean that the Kuiper belt extends further than previously thought, or that there is another belt beyond it, a second ring of ancient debris surrounding the solar system. We didn't know that. We couldn't have known that until our aircraft flew there. NASA has extended the mission until 2028 or 2029, until New Horizons leaves the Kuiper belt. The team continues to search for a new flyby target, but no suitable object has been found yet. Perhaps the spacecraft will simply fly into interstellar space without encountering anything else on its way, like the Voyagers, like the Pioneers, another messenger of humanity disappearing into the darkness. But before falling silent forever, he managed to show us Pluto. A world that was a dot for 85 years, a pixel on a screen, an abstraction at the edge of the map. Now it has a face, mountains and glaciers, blue skies and red plains, a heart named after the man who found it. Clyde Tombaugh died in 1997, 9 years before the mission was launched. He never saw these images. He never learned that his discovery was not a dead rock, but a living, complex, amazing world. But part of it, 30 grams of dust in an aluminium capsule, flew 12,000 kilometres from the surface of Pluto, and now it continues to fly towards stars that humans will never reach. It took 26 years of struggle, 9 years of flight, 4.5 hours of waiting for each signal, for the sake of a few hours at the destination, for the sake of photographs that took 15 months to reach Earth, for the sake of answers to questions we didn't even know how to ask. NASA's website received more than 2 billion hits during the flyby. Photos of Pluto appeared on the front pages of newspapers on all 7 continents. Millions of people who had never been interested in space suddenly wanted to see the heart at the edge of the solar system, because it matters. Not practically, not economically. Pluto will not provide us with resources, become a colony, or solve Earth's problems, but he reminds us that beyond the familiar, there are whole worlds out there. Complex, strange, beautiful, and waiting for us to find a way to reach them. New Horizons flies through the void. There is nothing around it, no stars nearby, no planets, only cold and silence. But he's still sending signals, and we are still listening.